It was long known that organs and limbs in the body had arteries and veins going into and out of them. Harvey suspected that arteries and veins were physically connected in some way, but the connection was not visible to the naked eye. To test this idea, Harvey cut an animal's artery and drained all of the blood from the animal. He then examined the veins for blood. We can see the reasoning in our format here. If arteries and veins are physically connected, and we drain the arteries of blood and then check the veins for blood, then the veins should be empty. And in fact, the results were the same as predicted, so the hypothesis was supported. Notice then, he's gathering evidence of the physical connection between arteries and veins, even though he couldn't see that physical connection. Inside the veins, but not arteries, are tiny little flaps of tissue that we now call valves. These valves allow blood to flow in one direction only. Galen probably noticed these valves, but did not appreciate their significance. Harvey did. Harvey realized that the valves in the veins allowed blood in the veins to move in one direction only, towards the heart. This meant that blood going to the body tissues must be traveling in arteries. In Harvey's mind, the blood seemed to be moving in a circuit. He began to investigate the possibility that blood was circulated throughout the body. Now in this picture we see a drawing of a vein here, which is a blood vessel, and it's hollow so that blood can travel through it. And up top here we see the valve. And the valve consists of these flaps of tissue that allow blood to move in one direction but not the opposite direction. Here we see the cross section of a vein, and again the blood can move in this direction through the one-way valve, but blood can't move in the opposite direction because these flaps will close up and prevent the blood from moving in the opposite direction. So these are one-way valves. And again, the argument is a clever argument by Harvey. If the veins only have these one-way valves, and that means that the blood is only allowed in the veins to move towards the heart. Well, if the blood can only move back to the heart in the veins, then the blood must be moving to the body parts through arteries. So arteries must be taking the blood from the heart to the body, and then the blood must be returning to the heart through the veins. The existence of these valves helped Harvey put the pieces together that the blood was being circulated around the body. Now in his book he has this famous drawing, and this is a technique to illustrate the existence of these valves in the veins without cutting open your veins to see them. As we've seen, one problem with Harvey's circulation theory was that no visible connection between the arteries and veins could be found in the tissues of the body. In order to support his theory, Harvey had to gather indirect evidence for the circulation of the blood. Now, we've already seen two kinds of indirect evidence. The existence of valves in the veins suggested a certain pattern of blood flow in the body, and when he drained the arteries, he found that the veins were also empty. Those two observations supported the idea for the circulation of blood, but now consider this third observation. Harvey began to record quantitative data about blood flow. First, he recorded the total weight of blood in a sheep. Let's say that figure is 5 pounds of blood in a sheep. Next, Harvey tried to calculate the amount of blood pumped per minute by measuring the weight of blood in the left pumping chamber and multiplying that by the number of heartbeats per minute. For example, he estimated that the left side of the heart contained 3 ounces of blood. He conservatively estimated that only 1/4 of this blood would be expelled, so 1/4 of the blood would be expelled with each heartbeat. Thus, 3/4 of an ounce of blood would leave the heart each beat. Harvey then conservatively estimated that the heart would beat about 33 times per minute. Using these numbers, 25 ounces of blood travel through the heart each minute. In 1 hour, almost 1,500 ounces, or about 90 pounds of blood, would have made it through the heart. Harvey realized that each hour the blood pumped by the heart far exceeds the total weight of blood in the body. He concluded that the same blood keeps going around and around through the body and back to the heart. The blood was circulating. Now let's use this diagram to pull together what Harvey is proposing for the circulation of blood. We'll start with the heart. The heart is a pump, not a furnace. And it's got two major pumping chambers, the ventricles. The right ventricle is pumping blood to the lungs. Now, because this is carrying blood away from the heart, we call this an artery. It's the pulmonary artery. Now, recall that Harvey could not see the connection between the large vessels here and then the large vessels on the other side of the lungs. He could not see capillaries, but he gathered indirect evidence that these two blood vessels were connected. So the blood passes through the lungs and then makes its way back to the left side of the heart. And this pumping chamber, the left ventricle, will pump blood out to the body. So the arteries here are carrying blood to the body. But again, these arteries are going to get smaller and smaller into tiny blood vessels. They're microscopic, called capillaries. Capillaries are those blood vessels that connect the arteries and the veins. So blood ends up back into the veins, and remember, it's in the veins where we have the valves. The valves keep the blood moving towards the heart. So we have a dual circulation system. One side of the heart, the right ventricle, pumping blood to the lungs and then back to the heart, and then the left side of the heart is pumping blood to the body and then back into the veins and back to the heart. Now these capillaries, these tiny blood vessels, we can see a cross-section what a capillary looks like. All blood vessels are made of cells, including the tiniest blood vessels, the capillaries. And this gray thing here is a cross-section of a capillary cell. And what it has done here is it's produced extensions of its membrane, kind of like an amoeba, to connect up with itself, forming a hollow chamber. And in this hollow space, that's where blood travels. So capillary cells create a hollow space through which blood cells travel. In the final lesson of this series, we'll return to what's happening up here in the lungs. You'll recall the ancients thought that air in the lungs was sent to the heart, and we will see that it's sort of the opposite. The blood is sent to the lungs to be mixed with air, rather than the mixing happening here in the heart.